this might sound quite bizarre, but when the financial crash happened in 2008, I was just very interested to see what was happening with that. And that got me involved in kind of reading stuff around economics. And then when in Trinity, I was doing economics and trying to understand what was happening from a society, like why do we do what we do? You know, like why do we do like 9-to-5 jobs, or why don't we do 9-to-5 jobs, or like, you know, why do we do things, and why do we go to school? All that kind of existential questions I wanted to work out. And economics was quite useful for giving models and structures to that kind of stuff. And then that coupled with the being involved in the European Youth Parliament, I could see then, okay, well then if we understand and get kind of ideas as to why we want to do certain things, we need to then build coalitions of support to be able to get a group of people together, or a mass of people together, to say, yeah, this is a good idea. We should try to do this. This will help certain people in society. And that's kind of where my politics kind of came from. So my politics is interesting in the sense that it's not party political. Like, I'm still an outside hire. I'm still not a member of any political party. You know, so that's kind of, I have a probably unique perspective on that. And I thought people would probably criticize me to say that I'm probably policy wonky, you know, or technocratic to a certain extent. And that label is somewhat true. But I just try to do, I suppose, policy with a conscience, and that's often difficult because, you know, the policies are very clear and very like, you do this action and then you will get this result. But politics is not like that, and politics is very chaotic, and politics is very unknown. Because you're dealing with people, and people, even though economics claims them to be rational, you know, that's very far from the truth. They're very erratic and very unpredictable. So yeah, it was trying to having an understanding of what needed to be done, and then finding a vehicle to be able to do it was why I got involved in politics.
Okay, perfect. And in terms of involvement in the Irish Parliament, do you think that that's given you a massive insight that you weren't, basically what I'm saying is there anything that surprised you from that role that you weren't previously aware of? Because obviously going in, you had such a good knowledge of politics, both in Ireland and on a European level, but working and seeing the inside scoop for the Irish Parliament, is there anything that surprised you or anything that you're fascinated by?
Yeah, it was actually quite disheartening, to be honest. I actually got quite frustrated in the beginning. Some people say I'm quite frustrated now still, with regards to the slow nature of politics. That probably comes from a personal level of impatience, because, like, as I said, we know what we need to do. Why don't we go do it? Kind of thing. And when that doesn't happen, it can be a little bit concerning to me. Because, you know, there's lives at stake in this kind of thing, and it impacts people very personally. So what I was saying there is that it was a concentration of power within the cabinet, within the executive, that is quite surprising to me. Like, that could be a specific Irish context, but looking at other parliamentary democracies across the world, it is quite clear that the executive is quite powerful in most jurisdictions. Scandinavian countries probably have one of the better accountability structures in place from the parliamentary perspective. But yeah, generally speaking, if you are not at the cabinet table, you're not going to be able to have much impact. Like, I write emails that say, thank you for your correspondence. You know, Deputy O'Connor will you know, speak to the relevant minister on this issue, because they have responsibility for that area. And we mean that genuinely, in the sense that, like, we're, like, I wouldn't go as far to say that we're a lobby group, but, like, you know, we do play very much a lobby kind of esque role, in the sense that we try to, again, build those coalitions of support to be able to change the opinions of the people that have the power to make the decisions, which is in this case the cabinet. So to give you an example of that would be rapid antigen testing. Rapid antigen testing, for people that don't know, is a quicker way of analyzing the presence of COVID-19 as opposed to PCR testing, which is your standard test. The difference between the two is the level of accuracy. So there's been a kind of opposition in Ireland to the introduction of rapid antigen testing because of the lack of accuracy, but we would argue that in controlled environments and in terms of the transmissibility of disease or the virus in this context, there's not a lot of difference in the 72-hour window in which you would be tested for, say, going on a flight or going to an event or a concert or things like that. Like basically anything to have any sort of contact with any other individual in a controlled environment. You know, the accuracy of the test doesn't matter because the time lag is the same. And we found it hugely difficult to get that across and to build a coalition of support. So like we were just doing a lot of like reading, and not a lot of reading, a lot of speeches and writing a lot of articles, trying to get people on side. You know, James sits on the transport committee, so we'd have different experts in trying to question them to say, okay, you know, what's your opinion on this? So to get the academic inside, to get the medical expertise, to get different stakeholders like the airports and stuff like that involved. And yeah, it is really about building that coalition of support. And that's something that's quite tiring, you know, because it's like, I think there's a phrase in marketing that says, I know 20% of my marketing budget works, but I don't know what 20%. And it's that kind of idea that you have to kind of throw everything at it. And if you throw everything at it, eventually something will stick, but it's so difficult to know what will stick. And navigating all that was probably the most eye-opening thing that I did or have seen in politics so far.
Okay. And when you say coalition of support, what exactly do you mean? I've never heard that phrase before. I'm sure people listening wouldn't have heard that before either.
Yeah, like coalition of support is how you like see the different stakeholders in society. So there's different interest groups in society, in the sense that there's let's take so in the coalition of support for the return of international travel, you would have the airline pilots, firstly, people who, you know, navigate the airplanes. Then you'd have the airports, which are the people where the planes are at. Then you'd have, so that's 140,000 people involved in that operation in Ireland. And then you'd have, alongside that, you'd have all the secondary jobs that are employed in that sector. And that's predominantly all the hospitality sector and tourism sector in Ireland, because we're heavily dependent upon international tourism in Ireland, because we haven't got a large enough domestic market to be able to support the level of tourism activity that we have in the country. So there's 3 different stakeholder groups there, or there's multiple within those, so you can break them all down. And this is what I mean by building coalitions of support. It's recognizing the different groups that are involved and bringing them then together and making sure they have a united front. Because you have to remember, before Christmas or at Christmas time of 2020, there was a toxic nature around flying and international travel in general. You know, we see that then in terms of the mandatory hotel quarantining in Ireland, very high level of restrictions in terms of movements, and that's quite damaging for our international reputation. So we'd have to kind of communicate that then to the different stakeholder groups to say, well, if, you know, we continue with the level of restrictions that we currently have regarding international travel, all of these different groups are affected by it. So there's 140,000 people in the aviation sector, plus the all the 300 and something thousand people employed in the tourism sector. And then lastly, I actually forgot to mention that in the beginning there, all the FDI, all the foreign inward direct investment that we have in the country. We have no Americans coming in terms of the multinationals. We have no the European hubs. No one can get in or out of the country legally. Obviously, we're very leaky as a country anyway, but that's a different argument. So it's trying to understand and recognize to the public, what is impacted by the decisions that are made. Because if you just took it from a public health perspective, you'd say, well, surely we should just lock down the island. That's the, zero COVID strategy. It's just like, lock everything down, very much what New Zealand and Australia have done over the last while. But their whole economy is tanking, and they have no vaccines at the moment, and they'll find it very difficult to reopen. So while it looks very good in the short term, you have to have a long-term perspective and understand how it impacts the different stakeholders, and then build them coalitions together to get your policy across and over the line.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. That's something that I'll be interested in learning more about. It's coalition of support is the term, correct?
Yeah, that's what I call it. It's just coalition building, generally speaking. But obviously, you want that the coalition actors to be supportive of each other would be useful, because they're a little bit fragmented, which they often are. And this is the thing, you need to have an overarching kind of banner to put them into, because nobody each I could get into kind of more minute granular detail about there's different slight interests in each of those little kind of groups that want a little bit different things, but they'll happily go with the overarching idea, of just opening up. And that's why it's nice to have, you see with the Brexit campaign, there's multiple different groups in the Brexit campaign, but take back control is a nice overall banner to build support of a coalition of actors.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like in politics, obviously, you need to become very skilled at negotiating and handling people. What are some of the skills that you have developed in your career so far in politics? What has that helped you to do? How can you apply those skills to other areas of life?
Yeah, no, it's a multitude of different skills. From a personal level, I've learned just to calm down. And I mean that in terms of, I don't know, maybe it's our generation, Jack, but kind of social media world we live in, and instant gratification and all that kind of stuff. But things don't happen immediately. And you can't force them to happen immediately. They're just not going to budge. I always had the impression before going into politics that surely if we knew what we're going to do, we could just go do it and bulldoze anyone or any opposition out of the way. That might be true in the private sector, but in the public sphere, where you have to take account of everything and everybody, that's not the case. So recognizing that you have to take your time and things will come eventually is the first thing I learned. So just bringing that kind of mentality to any kind of other area in life is good, I think, because it removes the stress on yourself to feel obligated to be constantly trying to do something. Yeah, I think to add to that, then you kind of see things in cycles, and you can understand that the issues just tick by and then come up again, and there's patterns there of how kind of things break and unfold. I think the best thing is it used to be a novelty to have a State of the Nation address in Ireland. They used to be very much big events. We have one every 6 weeks now. You know what I mean? And they can see all the timelines of how we're going to do the restrictions and reopen and things like that. And just recognizing that in your own job and own life, in the sense that things just kind of happen in certain ways, and not to be caught up in the noise of the everyday is very important. I think once you know your overall arching goal, it's useful to go to. And that's not even I actually like that phrase as much as I used to, kind of goal orientation, because The problem with goal orientation is that, and I found this in politics, it's never ending. There is no end, because there's always something else. Like we got a lot of school investment there recently. 3,000 kids are going to get a secondary school place and primary school place in the near future. Fantastic. That was in one part of the consistency. Immediately when we got that, another person asked, why didn't you get it in my part? Do you know what I mean? So there's always more to do. And that's why I think that it's better to have a systematic approach to looking at things, in terms of not saying this is the end goal and then we achieve everything and life will be bliss, but that we're constantly understand our purpose and understand our values. And then once we're doing no wrong, rather than necessarily doing good, we're doing okay. I think that's a nice life philosophy to kind of have in a job, to recognize that you have to be in tune in what you're doing. And that's something I'm obviously struggling with in this current job, in the sense that it's very hard to know what you want to be doing and what you should achieve, because there's so much you can do. So I'm still working on that one, to be honest, but that's definitely something I would see as transferable. That's more overarching. And then secondly, then in terms of the actual practicalities of the job, I'm an office manager, kind of thing. We have a secretary, and it's just myself and James, in the sense that we are, we do our own schedule. We have our own, that we set our own day. There's a lot of autonomy there. That I think you might have said I'm good and self-disciplined in terms of my own life normally. Probably am better than most, but just to learn those skills and understand what's important, how to prioritize, and how to work it out and make best use of your time. So I think a lot of problems with a lot of people when they go into jobs, graduate jobs in particular, they go into big companies with big structures, and you can quickly become a kind of a clog in a wheel of a big company. And that's not to disregard those companies, but it's just to say that people mightn't understand or see the bigger picture. Whereas I've seen the entire picture and know where we fit into the picture. I'm not just a small thing looking. I understand what we're doing. I understand where we need to go, and then I can manage that accordingly. We use cycles for projects and things like that to say, oh well, today we're going to do this. But there's no point doing it we're not just waiting for stuff to show up. We used to be a lot more reactive than we are. Well, we've got a lot better in the last while of not just saying, oh, this news story broke, so therefore we're going to do this. No, we still do media appearances like that. That's there's a lot of shadow boxing there as well. But yeah, I suppose that's the practical, and then the bigger arching would be two things that I would definitely take away from the year so far.
Awesome. I really like that point you made about the goals as well. It reminded me of something that Jeff Bezos said, where you should be very firm and definite on your overarching goals, but in terms of the execution at the micro level, you need to be flexible, because a lot of people are very rigid. It's like, I'm going to do this specifically, and they don't account for any outside influence or things coming that might affect their plan. So, and then again, of course, with government, it's different than the private sector, whereby you obviously need to account for a large group of people, like the entire country, essentially, when you're making your decisions, and it's never ending. So that's a good point you raised. I like as well what you said about the cog in the wheel mentality. It actually reminds me of a LinkedIn post. I was gonna try and mention this at some point in this podcast. A LinkedIn post you made recently about your master's. And obviously right now we're in a time where a lot of people are getting exam results. They're graduating from their undergrad or their graduate program, or they're getting their FE1s. Obviously I did law, so I see a lot of FE1 posts.
We'll get you there eventually, Jack. Don't worry.
Don't hold your breath on that one, Kevin. Well, I see a lot of the same types of posts. People will post about their degree, say that they're delighted to graduate with a 2-1 or a first, and thank their professors, family, and friends for the support, and that's fine. But what I noticed about your post that was different is obviously you acknowledged the graduation, or you acknowledged the receipt of results. But what you mentioned at the end was 3 things that you took. I can't remember exactly what the points were, but you mentioned 3 things that you took away from the experience. And LinkedIn is my favorite platform. I've talked about LinkedIn in previous podcasts. I'm not sure why it's my favorite platform, it just is. But the key thing with LinkedIn that I like that you can't get with other platforms usually is the ability to convey an experience and say what you learned from it. With every single post I've ever seen about graduation, it has literally just been a statement of facts. It's just been them saying the results, thank you, looking forward to the next steps, exciting times ahead, or whatever. Whereas with you, you actually conveyed a sense of value that other people can take away from the post. Whereas like, this is what I learned from this, this is what I learned from this, this is what I learned from this. And I think that links in to the cog in the wheel mentality, whereby if you're going into these, or because you look at these big corporate firms that have hundreds and thousands of positions, and there's no sense of individual thinking, really, especially at the start. Well, I haven't been in this role, but I know for sure that what you're doing now as a parliamentary assistant, you see, as you said, the bigger picture, and you have a sense of individuality in the work that you're doing, as opposed to going into one of these large corporations and just being what I call a plug in a socket. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that if you're doing it for the right reasons, but the LinkedIn post is just an example. It exemplifies to me that type of mentality. There is no way that every single person in college has had the exact same college experience. Yet when I see all these posts, every person posts literally verbatim the exact same thing. And I'm not taking away college. Getting a college degree is an achievement, no doubt, but why can't people be individual about it and convey what they actually learned, as opposed to the 4 or 5 statements of facts that every single person posts. So yeah, that just, when you said cog in the wheel there, that just triggered me thinking about that. But I think, yeah, look, you're definitely on.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting point though. Like, cog in the wheel stuff. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff to do around certainty for people. People like to find a level of comfort in what they're doing. People don't want to think all the time. They want to be able to do what they can do and enjoy then their life outside of the work. Now, you would probably argue that that's, as we were talking before we started this podcast, like, what is the definition of 9 to 5 and all that kind of stuff, and like, are we working or is it all a blend together? And I think that's something that's quite noticeable in the politics as well, in the sense that it's a 24-hour news cycle. Because it's a 24-hour news cycle, you could constantly be on and constantly trying to do something. And I don't know where I stand on this. I'd like to get your opinion on, Jack. Like, it's like, what is it? Like, are we trying to, because there's a lot of talk around, say, the 3-day work week or 4-day work week coming a thing. Like, so we're looking to have more leisure time. And then there's this other group of people that say, well, if your work is not your leisure time, then what are you doing? Like, so it's a very, and I'm exhausted at the moment, like, with what I'm doing, because I couldn't do the level of stuff that I'm trying to do forever. Like, so yeah, I don't know, what do you think on that? You seem to be having a very interesting lifestyle yourself there out now in New Mexico.
Yeah, me personally, look, obviously everybody's different. That's a very diplomatic premise that you can put in at the start of these rants. It's like, obviously, everybody's different. different styles suit different people. Me personally, I don't like the hard boundary between work and leisure. That's just me personally. I don't like this kind of, I know that I have this exact set amount of hours for work, and that outside of that is leisure time. With the type of work that I do, and again, I made a LinkedIn poll about this recently. It's like, how many hours per week do you work? That was a question that I asked, and I had different categories. And I honestly don't know, because it depends on what you consider. Like, it really depends on what you consider work. Like, it is sending a work email while you're watching Netflix work? Is having dinner and then going to a nightclub with a client or a prospective buyer work? And then, because they had a great time while you were doing leisure, or is it leisure, is it work? But say it's leisure, because you had that great time with the client doing leisure, that then positively influences their decision to make the purchase. So it really depends on the individual's opinion of what work is. I mean, is going to the gym work? It contributes to you becoming better as a person, and it'll probably, in the long term, have a positive influence on your ability to make money. So is that work?
I don't know, because the thing is, like, I'd often would see these people, and we saw a little bit in EYP, like a person that throws their life into a certain thing, and they become like, Kevin Boland, the parliamentary person, and like that's all they do, and it's all consuming. Like, and you see a lot of politicians, like when they say they lost their seat, there's nothing to do after that. Like, all they did before was their job. They've no outside hobbies, no life, no kids, no family. A lot of times as well. So I often just wonder, like, do you need, like, it goes back to kind of diversification and risk averseness. Like, do you not need to diversify your life ever so slightly to make sure that if one thing goes, that you're not like totally exposed as a consequence?
Yeah, look, I think diversity is important for most people, but there are some fanatics who can just go hard at one thing until death. There's people who are just like the likes of Elon Musk. I mean, obviously he's got SpaceX, he's got Tesla, he's got other ventures, he's got that boring company as well. Someone like him is just geared to work 100 hours a week. And if that's what someone enjoys, then that's what they should do. But I appreciate, and this is something that I've struggled with, I need to appreciate that everybody has a different mentality and approach when it comes to work. Some people want to do a set number of hours, whether it's big or small, and they're definite hours. They don't need to go above or beyond that or below that. And then they know for a fact that they can schedule in leisure time way in advance. What I really like about what I do is the flexibility and this nature of work. I work in real estate. It's not a job where you're pinned to the office all day. You can be in the office if you want. You don't have to be in the office if you don't want to. You can be out having lunch with a potential buyer. You can be on the beach showing the lifestyle, because what we're selling is not just properties, but we're selling a lifestyle as well. That's why people invest. I'm in the Mexican Caribbean. That's the reason why people are buying here, is because it's cheap, and compared to equivalent properties in the US or Canada or Europe, and the lifestyle here, and obviously right now because it's more open than the majority of the world, so it's easy to come down and view properties. But it's interesting what is, to me, what can be considered work and what isn't work. I mean, if you enjoy it, is it work? It could be hell. Like, for example, the job I'm doing, some people might hate it. I'm like, oh, this is hard work. This is, I don't like this. But if you enjoy it, and look, don't get me wrong, there's times in this where it is boring and it is administrative, which I don't particularly like. But
you don't like the, I never knew that, Jack. I thought you liked the admin stuff. No.
It really, if you enjoy it, Is it really?
No, I just wonder though, because we talk about ambition. I'm very ambitious. I like the ambition part of it. It's just that I don't know. It's just there's a lot of conflicting kind of views and opinions in the sense that because like when people immediately talk about ambition, they start to talk about burnout. There's always this kind of different side of the coin to be able to kind of view things. And I understand what you're saying as well in terms of if I enjoy it, surely it's not work. Never work a day in your life type philosophy. I get it. It's quite fun to be able to find something to be able to do that. You wonder, and I think it's something I was saying to you before we started the podcast as well. I have this kind of philosophy. I don't know if it's right or not because you can't tell until you get to the end of it about doing things in the right order, or like the opportunities that present themselves in your 20s to be able to do things are not the same as your 30s or your 40s or older. And if you spend all your time or I spend all the time in politics, it's an older environment. There's not many 20-year-olds in politics, for example. So therefore, you're not really with a group of peers. For example, you're out in the real estate industry. Probably not a lot of people at your age, or at least there's not as many. Like the clients are always going to be older. You're not in these big firms where there's thousands of young people that all go to Crystal at the weekend. You know what I mean? To a nightclub, and that's where you're at. So therefore, we don't get the opportunities to make the friendships or the potential partnerships and things like that. Like it's those little small things. But is that just a societal construct? But if everyone's doing it, does it have meaning, or was it just because they didn't think about it? So you just fall into like getting married or wanting kids or doing that thing of having a suburban house with the front lawn and and your car and your little dog.
Fence.
And the picket white fence. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And you're right. Who I work with now, obviously I work with a Mexican company, but in terms of people my age, not very many. It's an SME. It's not a large corporation by any means. That is a good point. I mean, yeah, you can forge a lot of close professional relationships with people your own age, in different types of companies, particularly the larger ones. I don't know though, because there is the advantage of being surrounded by people who are older than you, who have more knowledge than you, and who have more wealth. I mean, if that's what you're aspiring for, like all of the clients that I deal with are at least mid-30s and above, up until retirement. So these people have knowledge, probably more knowledge about real estate than me. I mean, I'm 23 years old. I'm not going to lie. I mean, these people.
I hope they would have at their age.
A lot of these people they're serial investors. They've been investing for years, and they have life experience as well. So, I'm grateful to be surrounded by people who have much more knowledge than me. People who they're much further on in their careers than I am, and they have insight that I couldn't gain if I was surrounded by people my own age all the time.
But I totally agree with that point as well. I'm not disregarding that point. It's just because I'm like, James and I are in a weird position that we're always the youngest person in the room, constantly, because of our age. So we do get that we would appreciate an older person sometimes, because we're like leading meetings sometimes with things you wonder why we're there, and that's no discredit to anybody. It's just that
knowledge beyond your years, in fairness.
Knowledge beyond my years, but that's, you still haven't. I think there's the first, thank you, but secondly, I think there's it's not an imposter syndrome, but there's definitely I would like, or at least feel a bit more comfortable with a bit more support, that rather than us flipping a coin to see, oh, this is a good thing to do this week, type thing, because we think it would be from our, just shared experiences, but the shared experiences are limited in a certain extent. So like, yeah, like it's an interesting one. It's like it gets into this idea of, okay, so I have all this exposure and all this autonomy to all these new experiences, fantastic. Do I want structure? Kind of, yeah. Yet then if you told me to go and work in a big company, I was like, oh, too much structure. So like you can't win, like there's a balancing act there. But I do get what you say though, in terms of having people around you that are more experienced and, just have those insights that you just haven't got, but you just can't get them because you just haven't had enough time. Yeah, that they are useful. It's just to think about, I don't know, there's a lot to be said about kind of the camaraderie of feeling like you're with someone or with a group of people that you're kind of all fighting the same battles in the trenches on the first, and you're all together. It's all your first time. It's all the first experience. It's very formative kind of time. Maybe in a university, like not the biggest pally person in university, but I still like the fact that everyone was there trying to achieve the same thing. There's a nice kind of atmosphere there, like that we're all working towards the same thing. Whereas when you're in positions like we're in, like it's less so because there's many different people doing different things, and there's not a support network. I suppose what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, it's a good point, Kevin. It really is. I think people forget how long life is as well. There seems to be a bit of a rush to get that contract with the firm straight out of college. You're 22 years old in a life that's going to be who knows how long, because we're not taking into account the potential
your poor diet, Jack. Yeah.
for major medical advancements. We could live until 100, 150. Who knows? So I'm echoing the sentiments of a entrepreneur from New York named Gary Vaynerchuk. You've possibly heard of him. And his whole deal with people coming out of college, particularly in their 20s, is they should experiment with different types of work, different types of experiences in their 20s to see what exactly it is they want in terms of their work life and their personal life as well. And I think that's a really good idea. And that's not information that is preached to the masses. That's I've never heard anyone other than him say that, for example.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I suppose what we have basically done for the last 15 minutes there is kind of highlight the kind of pros and cons of these different kind of pathways that one can take in life. And I think, as we said, it's all about what you feel personally then is most suitable to you thereafter. So I definitely agree with that kind of sentiment. And, that's one of the reasons why I took this job in the Parliament was, well, one, because COVID, I saw COVID kind of came after that, and I was like, oh, I'm stuck in Ireland for the first time in 3 years, so I better do something to occupy my time. So I decided to do a full-time job and a full-time master's because I'm a little bit insane that way. But yeah, I think it was very useful for me to be able to scratch that political itch, get that exposure, to say to come on a podcast with you, Jack, and say that I can give some insights as to what happens and what's about. It's not going to be what I'm going to do forever. It's not what I'm doing forever. Like, I'm actually, once I wrap up this master's, I'm starting another master's, in management consulting in August, moving to Amsterdam, because that was my kind of initial plan pre-COVID, was to go and have that international exposure and move into management consulting. Now, this might jar with some of the previous sentiments that I had of a cog in the wheel of a big company, but it's with the intention of getting exposure to many different industries within the consulting field, and hopefully, fingers crossed, getting into one of the kind of higher end strategy consulting firms, which have smaller teams working on kind of very much. It's kind of what I'm doing now in terms of the level of meetings. Like I'm in meetings with the Prime Minister and the ministers at the moment most weeks. So in terms of the clients, they're not going to be any bigger than what I'm currently doing. But they're going like it's just to get the exposure across many different industries is what I'm looking forward to doing. To get was it Gary V, that's the guy in it. Yeah. To say like, yeah, go and find all the different things that you want to be able to look at and what you want to do, because there's no point latching. Like I got a training contract with PwC when like I was there in 2017 or something like that. I was a child like when I was there because I won a competition. I just thought I was great going in with my suit and my tie, wandering around.
So you did the summer internship after first year, and then your performance, they said when you graduate in 3 years, you have a training contract here for you.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, I was okay. Like I wasn't like that naive. I just like was like I thought it was like I was just like thought it was amazing to be able to go around with the lads, and then as I said, go to the nightclub on a Thursday. Like that was kind of fun. Like I was just there. See how this whole world worked. Like it was a big glass building down in the Docklands. Like
where you going to on Thursdays? Coppers?
No, they owned. Go to what you call it. Crystal above Dicey's. That was always the place for a lot of the. That was the place for all of the what you call it. Trainee accountants.
Do you know Crystal Playroom? That like luminous pink red room.
I do. Yeah. Why?
Well, the influencers get photos. Did you get a pic in there?
I didn't get a pic in there. No, I'm not. I stay in the shadows, Jack. That's my main thing. We're deep state here. Yeah, never be seen. Only this is. I'm not even normally doing podcasts like this. Like I normally hide in the shadows. So, just for you. But no, like that's the thing. Like it's go and find out what you want to do. And I think it's useful to spend your 20s doing that. Like I remember in a call with what's her name, Saoirse McKenna, who's the managing partner of McKinsey Dublin and also in charge of the kind of medical kind of public health sector for McKinsey Global, which is obviously quite prevalent now with the pandemic. She was saying like, yeah, go have fun, go do something for a bit, come back to us, sub 30, like that's kind of because we don't want to be too old, like so like go and do work that you want to go sail the world if you want to go to that, go do a PhD if you want to go do a PhD, like the amount of people I know in high ranking positions that their base qualification or what they did in their 20s is so far not associated with what they're currently doing now or the position that they're in. It's a lot more, I wouldn't say worrying, but if you thought like that the system was go do your degree and then do this and do this, do this, you'd be quite shocked at like the kind of unstructured line as to where people were achieving their goals. So yeah, don't worry about it too much is what I say. Like, just go and see what you want to do, and then hopefully find something. Like I think again, finding values and finding kind of a mission statement, not to sound too corporate, but generally speaking, like as in like what you want to achieve and what you want to do. Like I know myself like that I want to be able to just make a nice, tolerant, diverse environment for people to operate in generally in a society, like not to be discriminated against or not to be just generally be able to live their own life, like live their best life in that sense, like not that they feel oppressed in any way. And then after that, like once they have like certain minimum standards of educational claim they can achieve as much as they want to achieve in that regard, then like let the society roar, like because that's what we see in a lot of societies. Like the best societies are the ones that are most open and the ones that are most inclusive. And if I can kind of help contribute to that, like because Ireland, as you know yourself, Jack, we're doing a lot better than we used to. We're outside of the clutches of the Catholic Church. that was previously there, but a lot more to be done.
Yeah, I like the point you made there about work and the fact that what people anticipate their career to be, it's not as structured as what they anticipate. So I remember actually at an EYP event, I think it was Dublin's 2017, and usually I don't pay attention to these speeches, but it was a dragon from the Irish Dragons Den, I can't remember her name. She was a guest speaker at the closing ceremony. Can you remember?
I don't know. Was I there for that one? I feel like I was in Finland that weekend. I actually.
I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure if you were there.
It was after the one Peter Rapanis did.
I was chairing with Matthew Summers. I don't know if you were. I feel like you were,
okay. Yeah.
You were there. But I remember this dragon said that, I think it was one of the first things she said as well. She pointed to everyone, officials and delegates alike. She said, the jobs you're going to have in the future haven't been created yet.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
And I think that's fascinating. I think Bitcoin and crypto is a perfect example of that. You now have companies that are digital asset companies that formerly did not exist before the advent of Bitcoin in 2008. So think about how young that is. Think about it. Obviously, Bitcoin is a bit bearish right now, but and all cryptocurrencies. But
I was going to say we can have a conversation about Bitcoin if you want, but
I'm just using that as an example. Not even 13 years old, and look at how much of a wave it has caused in the financial sector. It's very exciting for me and for everybody to think of the possibility of having a job in the future or working in an industry in the future that doesn't even exist. Now, the odds of a completely new industry being created, slim, but a subcategory of an existing one, for sure. And that's,
it's always evolutionary. It's never, there's no new ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember a great quote that I heard. One of the major pitfalls of prediction is seeing the future as an extrapolation of the past. So
that's good. I like that one.
Don't look to the past in making predictions of what the future life is going to be. In 2005, could you have predicted Bitcoin and smartphones and AI to the level that it's been developed to today?
We could give it a good go, Jack. I think I'm only joking. No, but it is like history is an interesting one because history is a pattern of rhyme. It does rhyme every so often, so it's never the same. But there is cycles there. I think there's cycles of economic development anyway that you can see where different trends are going to emerge. Like I spent this morning trying to work out. I'm doing a thesis at the moment. As I said, I'm currently studying a master's of economics in European public affairs and law for my sins, and trying to work out the fiscal stimulus that we're going to need, say, over the next while. Like, where is that going to go, for example? And there's things like that. You have to look to the past to see. So I spent the morning looking at like the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, the stagflation in the 70s, the financialization in the 80s, the deregulation in the 90s. So it is useful to look backwards. And I'm not diminishing what you're saying in terms of jobs. We have no idea what's coming ahead. But it is useful to see how humans operate. I think this is something I've learned from politics as well. Humans are quite interesting. So they take Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin is just a reaction to the collapse of the financial market in 2008 and people getting scared and wanting to have some sort of ownership in their own hands. That's why the deregularized system is it deregulated ledger technology kind of stuff? Is very much just people like, I think it was Bill Gates. Obviously, his credibility's dropped ever so slightly in the last while. But like he used to say that banking is important, but banks are not, and it's really just a kind of sentiment of that. But I think it's very interesting to look at humans and where humans are going to go, because there's a lot of comparisons now at the moment for the roaring 20s, post pandemics. They're trying to say, like, what happened after the Spanish flu in 1918? Where did we go? What happened? And then people start whipping out The Great Gatsby and say, well, look what happened there. This is what's going to happen. So look, it is interesting to see that we can kind of understand where the at least the market flow is going to go in terms of particular jobs. Yeah, it is an interesting one. You don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, so I think not worrying about it too much is important. Definitely, it's important not to get caught up in it. I think is the main thing. I think that's quite jarring for a lot of people though, because if you get it's concern for wanting to have stability, yet the world has never been stable, and if it was stable, then it would not be going anywhere. And anything that is not going anywhere eventually over time goes backward. So that wouldn't be that's problematic, So we have to continuously be moving forward. But at the rate of change is something that you can't lock down. And yeah, I know, Jack, I'm starting to get very philosophical here, so I hope I'm not losing your listeners.
Not at all. That has tends to have been the trend for the previous episodes as well.
Oh, I thought you were going to say my rambling thoughts are all like that.
No. With the previous episodes, it starts off specific to a topic, and then it just naturally evolves into a discussion of important topics. So it's not a ramble if there's value. That's a good quote.
People can find the value. That's the question.
There's value. That's a good quote, I think. Put my photo, put my portrait in black and white, and put that quote just below my head. Tell me about the work that you're about to embark on in management consulting.
Yeah, sure. So I'm heading off to Amsterdam end of August, going to the VU there, which is in the business district of Amsterdam. I suppose in comparison to what I'm currently doing in my master's, this one will be a lot more practically orientated. It's going to be a lot of hands-on kind of consultancy work. So what is consultancy work then is the question. Consulting is interesting as we talk about providing value. It is about trying to provide value to clients, to give different perspectives, different insights into what their industry is and how different trends outside of that are going to impact their business going forward. So it's kind of like what we've been talking about for the last while, kind of taking apart current structures and analyzing them then to see how both internal and external factors will impact them over time. And yeah, like consulting can be criticized for, not having the follow through, particularly in regards to the public sector. We can see a lot of consultants would come in and they would present a couple of key scenarios and outcomes from those scenarios and then, leave. And they wouldn't have any implementation aspects to it. Now that has been changing ever so slightly. It's hard to do though, in terms of having, consultants constantly on the books because they're expensive. So, and that's something like I know this sounds quite it sounds bad in one sense, or it sounds making me sound lazy. But like I like just doing the macro aspects of things rather than trying to do all of the implementation side of things, because that involves dealing with people and dealing with a lot of stakeholders, which at least in the politics side of things, but in any kind of organization, like managing personalities is quite draining, because you have to take account of all of the different viewpoints and the worldviews and perspectives that they have. And you can't just say, here's my good idea, and then you can take it on board yourselves and work it in to your day-to-day practices. So yeah, going back to what I'm doing, then it's going to be just kind of honing the skills on that. So it's a lot of communication skills and a lot of analytical skills then. So basically be able to take and understand the industry quite quickly, and then present findings and outcomes for clients as how to navigate whatever particular issue they've asked the people to come into. So I'm looking forward to it. Like, it's going to be quite a nice experience. Obviously, I had international exposure prior to this through EYP, but I have been very much in a national. I've been on the island too long, so it'd be nice to get off the island for a bit. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to throwing myself into that. Also, I suppose it's getting kind of out and about again. Like, the only reason why people ask me why or how was I able to do what I did this year was because there's something else to do, in the sense of like social life and things like that. Like, it's very little. Yeah, like I think I've been inside a pub maybe like, but no times this year yet. Like, and this is.
I love the way that that's the standard that you use for socializing.
Yeah, that's my metric. Yeah.
Inside a pub.
Yeah, but okay, maybe that's just that says something about me. But obviously, I met people outside and for coffee and things like that. But do you know what I mean? Like the actual level of engagement.
I'll do the exact same.
Yeah. So like that has not really like happened as much this time. Yeah, and there's so many times you can sit at the side of the canal, you know, in a quite a cold and wet Dublin. You know what I mean? So I'm looking forward for all that kind of side of things to be back and enjoy that. And it gets back to what I'm saying about the things you can do in your 20s that you can't do in your 30s. Let's try to continue to do some of those. So yeah, that's kind of a brief overview, I guess. Jack.
Perfect. Listen, Kevin, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's I'm looking forward to watching this one back, because you've dropped a lot of knowledge that I previously, not that I haven't been aware of it, but well, for the politics for sure, you've mentioned things that I have not been exposed to before, but also the way that you can articulate things. It is interesting to analyze, and I look forward to going back and watching this over.
I'm very happy, Jack, that you enjoyed it. I'm very happy that you invited me on. I really hope you and wish you all the best for this podcast. And yeah, you're the next big influencer, Jack. And I'll definitely give it a like on LinkedIn when it's up.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Any final words? Any closing remarks?
Any closing remarks?
Speech.
No, I suppose if I was to give some takeaways from what I said, I would just say to people, relax, and enjoy what you're doing. Try not to get caught up in day to day. Recognize that you will always land on your feet. There's not a lot that you can do that can make things go dramatically wrong. You can always pull it back. Like, there's no one holding you on a downward spiral completely. You can always change that direction. And yeah, just to have fun I don't know what the audience level for this thing will be in terms of age, but just go and have some fun. Don't waste life. We're here for a good time, not a long time. And I think I'll leave it at that, Jack.